Well, welcome to the Coach's Corner. Hi, I'm Frank Barbahan, and I will be your discipleship coach for this week with your permission. This is number 8, and we're focused on what happens to us when we feel like enough is enough, when we feel like we want to commit suicide. What happens is that we have spontaneous cravings, longings, and fantasies that emerge in a way that's beyond our conscious control. It's not like somebody sits back and just consciously deliberates about committing suicide. They may have those moments where they're determining how they're going to do that, but the longings or the cravings and the fantasies that come with it usually emerge spontaneously. And the longing for death is centrally a longing for peace. And peace acts like a seductor, where it offers absolutely blind and mindless and painless quiet or peace, where our inner drama is done. Now, the fantasies that somebody who is suicidal creates, they're usually loaded with meaning. So, for example, somebody may have a fantasy of killing themselves and then what happens at the funeral. And they picture family and friends at the funeral and how family and friends are crying and how they have regrets and wishing they had reached out more and so forth. The person with the suicidal fantasy, part of the reason for the suicide is to, in a sense, provoke all those emotions in family and friends and have them regret that they didn't reach out more, that they didn't see what was happening to them. Somebody might have a fantasy of blowing their brains out. And part of the meaning of the fantasy for some is that they want to do to themselves what they feel that the suffering has done to them. That is, the suffering feels like it was a violent attack on them. And in a sense, they're going to one-up the violence by violently killing themselves. But they also want to put on display for family and friends the enormous amount of pain that they were going through, the violence that was perpetrated against them by whatever suffering they're going through. And so they put on display for family and friends a violent end, so that their family and friends, in a sense, can bear witness to the violence that was happening in their lives. Somebody else might have a fantasy of hanging themselves. And oftentimes, the hanging is symbolic of choked off communication within themselves, choked off communication between them and family and friends, where they feel isolated and conversations about their pain and suffering are not happening, or the conversations are not reaching them, that somehow family and friends are not locking in and bearing witness to what's really happening to them. And they may feel the same way with their Heavenly Father if they're a Christian, that their Father has not locked in well enough, has not communicated well enough, and just left them abandoned to their suffering, kind of like Jesus on the cross feeling abandoned. And the rope around the throat represents the closed-off communication among all the players. Finally, the suicide can also be an act of protest against the Almighty, that they're angry, fed up with the way God has managed their little universe. And they kill themselves as a way to protest against God and his lack of care in rescuing them from their intense suffering. It's like the Tibetan monks, many of them have done with the Chinese government. About 100 Tibetan monks have poured gasoline on themselves and lit it, committing suicide as a protest to the Chinese government. Suicide for believers in God, and for Christians in particular, often functions as a protest against the Almighty and the way he's conducted himself in their lives. Well, your thoughts, comments, questions, feel free to blog me or email me at frank@peakperformancediscipleship.com, frank@peakperformancediscipleship.com, and we'll see you next time.